Super excited. And the Dolphins are signing offensive tackle Isaiah Wynn to a one-year deal, according to NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
COVID-19 has cast a spotlight on the stark inequalities that drive poverty. The poorest communities in the U.S. and around the world are suffering the most. Oxfam believes we can put systems in place to protect health and livelihoods in the future if we work together with dignity and compassion. Learn how you can help offer safety to the most vulnerable and fight for a more resilient future at oxfamamerica.org. Sponsored by Oxfam America.
All new spring deals are here at Lowe's. Get top deals on everything you need to freshen up your yard, like the Cobalt 24-volt string trimmer and leaf blower combo kit, only at Lowe's. Was $199, now just $149. Plus, get your lawn in shape with up to $15 off select Scott's Easy Seed Lawn Repair Mixes. Lowe's knows spring. Lowe's knows home improvement. Offers valid through 5/17. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Scott's offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome in, everybody. Sports Daily on a Monday, following Mother's Day. It's Jacob Albracht. It's Tommy Castor. Max Power in for Jad this week. Glad to have Max here on board, taking your calls to the IHOP hotline at 869-1240. We have all kinds of fun stuff coming up for you today as we make our way back through the holiday weekend. We've got a Game 7 to talk about that, well, is good for a little while, and then we'll get into it. It was something, certainly. All kinds of stuff in that world. We have realignment conversations happening as we speak. Apparently, we have Wichita State softball and baseball to get back through, and much, much more. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here on a Monday. I hope you had a great Mother's Day with your beautiful wife and your kids. And I certainly did. And glad to be back here on a Monday.
Our Mother's Day was spent putting out fires at the stores, at the businesses, but we got it done. That hopefully I was able to handle most of that. We got a little brunch in. Got to have a little brunch.
Love that. So did we.
Got to have a little brunch, and then let's see, what else did we do? They watched a movie. It was pretty anticlimactic. It was not, like the storybook. Didn't go quite as expected. And then I'm sitting here today, Tommy. I got to get blood work done, which means I got to fast. And for some reason, and I don't know, because this was 6 months ago, I decided it'd be a better idea to do this after the radio show. So I'm running on only water since about, I don't know, like 10 o'clock last night. So if I pass out on the air, I've got the metabolism of like a hummingbird. So I got to eat a lot most of the time, but this could go poorly if I just trail off and you guys lose me.
If you just kind of start to nod off in the middle of a sentence. Yeah. No, I've always thought, though, that the meal that you eat like immediately following blood work when you've been fasting is the greatest thing in the world. Like, you just go to town. You feel so good about it. Like, I've always enjoyed that. Like, it's that anticipation that you're waiting for.
This is like for cholesterol too, like, because I've been spending 6 months, like I have high cholesterol, and so I'm stubborn, and I'm like, I can get that down on my own. So I've spent 6 months trying to do that. So this is even a post blood draw, try to eat healthy for 6 months meal. So I am looking forward to whatever that ends up being.
Like
I don't
a
know
triple bacon cheeseburger, maybe like a greasy pepperoni pizza.
Yeah.
Like, just have that, like, go to town.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That does sound good. But I hope everybody had a great Mother's Day weekend. Mother's Day is awesome because moms are awesome, and I hope everybody was able to celebrate wives, moms, all that good stuff as we did. Again, the IHOP hotline is 869-1240. You can find us on our stream as well now, so we are available for you video wise on Facebook, on YouTube. Just to the KFH pages. And then on Twitter, you can follow us at Sports Daily. So lots of different ways we can do that and get in touch with you. It is a Monday, Tommy, which means we will be reacting mostly to what we saw over the weekend, and the most, high profile, big ticket item from the weekend was a Game 7 that we got, and it was not very much of one. It was not very good at all. In fact, it was okay for a half, and then Philadelphia scores 10 points in the third quarter, gets outscored by 23 after halftime, and gets housed 112-88. Joel Embiid, not good. Jason Tatum, very good. 51 points, 13 rebounds for Tatum. Jaylen Brown was also good. He had 25. The Celtics flex and probably reinsert themselves as one of the favorites here. And I'll check the odds as we're talking to see. I'm curious. I bet they jumped up to number 2 in the marketplace now that we're into this thing. And no, they actually passed Denver, Tommy.
Wow.
They passed Denver. Everybody's plus money, which is really interesting. So the Celtics are at plus 110. Denver's at plus 240. Lakers at plus 300. And you can get 12-1 on the Heat. That surprises me. And here we go again with Denver. Boston needed Game 7. Denver rolls through Phoenix. And man, I'm really surprised to see that this morning. I don't think I would bet Boston there. I would definitely take the field, but I might take Denver or the Lakers over Boston. But man, they look good in Game 7.
Yeah, they did. Jason Tatum was incredible. I've been critical of Joe Mazzulla in this series. I felt like there were a couple of different games that Doc Rivers was out coaching him. That certainly was not the case in Game 7. Mazzulla was great. He made some great adjustments. I know he went with 2 bigs. That was a big adjustment that ultimately worked for Boston. And like I mentioned before, and you mentioned it also, Jason Tatum was phenomenal, dropping over 50 points in a deciding Game 7. He was fantastic. I'm not sure if there are any more superlatives that you can say in regards to Jason Tatum, because he was great and he led the Celtics to victory. And I think that the way that you described it is absolutely correct. The Celtics flexed in that Game 7. They showed why they've been the favorites in the East all season long. And you know what? I don't know. I think it's kind of a two-headed monster here, because not only were the Celtics incredible, the Sixers were like equally as bad. Doc Rivers coaching was horrendous. That guy is terrible in Game 7s. It's like surprising that it's even gotten to that point in his career. And then Joel Embiid and James Harden both were really, really bad. And so I think as impressive as it was for the Celtics, I think it might be equally as disappointing for the Sixers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, because it takes me into this, and this is what I'm thinking about. Like, Joel Embiid's your MVP of the league. He goes 15-8 on 5 of 18 shooting. How does Joel Embiid go number 1 as a center, 5 of 18 from the field? Like, how does that even happen?
I mean, I don't think he's clearly 100%. I mean, I feel like watching him come back, he looked a little labored at times, looked gassed in that game. So I don't know if it's the injury quite as much as it is just getting back into game form. You know what I mean? But still, it wasn't a good showing at all by Embiid.
And then for James Harden, who we talked about this being so much of a legacy series, was not good at all. 9, 6, and 7. He passed the ball pretty well, but 3 of 11 from the field. Their stars just didn't show up. And so is that a Doc Rivers thing? I don't know, but your 2 best players didn't play very well. And it makes me wonder with Embiid, as we've seen, we see Tatum on the other side go for 51, and we've seen Jokic do crazy things in this postseason. And yes, I was fine with Embiid and in the camp of Embiid getting, MVP of the league. But it does make me wonder, like, he is still sort of a unicorn the way he plays. I mean, Jokic is a big dude, but they play different ways. And I just wonder, like, Embiid's the MVP, but like, if you had to like take a guy to build around, like, where would he fall on that list? Right? Because I don't know that it's still super high. He's an interesting player because he almost has to be paired with somebody. And the Harden experiment didn't quite get him over the finish line here. I mean, look, they went to a Game 7 here and had Boston, the prohibitive favorite, on the rope. So let's not pretend like it was a colossal failure for Philadelphia. I don't think it was that. It was a failure in Game 7 at home. I wish they, sorry, not at home to get to game 7 on the road. They won a bit, they've won some big games in this postseason, but I just wonder, like Embiid and, his style of play, like where would he go? Like not in an MVP vote, because I don't have a problem with that, but in I'm going to start my team with this guy vote. I think it's pretty far down the list.
I think what's really interesting about the conversation with Embiid is that, it was as recently, I think, as Friday or Thursday of last week. You and I were talking about what's going to happen if the Sixers don't win the series, and will Embiid feel like he needs to go elsewhere, to get his ring, and what does that all look like? And I was thinking this through the lens of Embiid having a really good game 7, but the Celtics or the Sixers still losing, and then Embiid feeling like I've got to go elsewhere. Embiid played really bad. And so I think that changes the narrative a little bit. I don't know if you heard his post-game comments at all. And I'm a Joel Embiid guy. I've always liked Joel Embiid. He's a KU guy. Obviously, I'm a KU guy. Sure. I've always been in support of him. But his comments after the game talking about how, he and Harden can't do it all, and they've got to have, some other guys to be able to, help lead them to victory, because it's always got to be a team effort. And I'm like, dude, you played terrible, and Harden played terrible. What are you talking about? It can't just be you and Harden leading the team to victory. You've got to have more. Like, you need to do more, and Harden needs to do more. I was really kind of taken aback by that. I didn't love that quote by him, because I felt like, really there were a couple of other guys on that team. Tobias Harris, I think, was probably the best guy on the court for the Sixers, throughout the course of that game. Maxey, I thought, played okay. Really, it was, Harden and Embiid were probably the two worst players on the court during the game. So I didn't love that. And I'm not sure what, if he's going to basically throw his entire team under the bus. I'm not sure really what that means for his future in Philly.
Probably nothing. I mean, as far as Embiid's, they're not doing anything with Embiid. What else are they going to do? Right? Like, maybe Harden, you can think about a change, but you're not changing anything if you're Philadelphia. You do have to continue to try to build probably around those two, at least that one. I mean, it's hard. I hate this for franchises because, it's like Philadelphia's put this together and been wildly successful, right? For the last, 5 years? But they'll be punished, in retrospect, because they haven't been able to get over the hump, which is really hard to do in the NBA, right? Go look at the list of champions. There's not a lot of variety in there. And so we're going to pretend like, a team behind a coach who's won gobs and gobs of games and players who are both probably Hall of Famers, like that it's been unsuccessful. And it's not that it's unsuccessful, not that Harden's been there for a long time. He hasn't, but Joel Embiid has. But it's not been unsuccessful. I don't think it's anything like, it's frustrating to not be able to get over the edge, but like, what's the alternative? Would you rather be Portland? Would you rather be, I don't know, like, is being a 3 seed and competitive for a long time? Like, it's this weird thing we do in sports where is it championship or bust? And we like to say that, but that's not realistic. That's not fair.
Well, I mean, come on. Like, every organization is going to say that the objective is championships, right? And so if you're working towards that consistently, I think that one thing to keep in mind with a franchise like Philly, to an extent, Phoenix did this over the weekend. I think that, like, Phoenix felt like they had gone as far as they could go with the leadership under Monty Williams. So they let Monty Williams go. Williams is a good coach. He'll land somewhere else. But I think they felt like they had reached the peak of, however far Monty Williams could take them, and potentially the way the roster is constructed. It's kind of the same way I would think, maybe not quite to that level, but the same way I would think with Philly, right? Where, has Doc Rivers taken them as far as he can take them? The way that the roster is built up, currently, how far can realistically they go? And so I think that those are conversations that wouldn't surprise me if Doc Rivers is done. I think he's shown
that, because that's about the only thing you can do left, right? Like, if you're that, like, you can't do a whole lot else other than make a change there to try and get more to get to that next step. And that's, and that sometimes that happens. And I get that. Like, if it's not going to work with Doc Rivers, like, you can't blow up the roster because at that point, what's the alternative, right? Look at Oklahoma City when they finally had to just implode. Like, it takes a long time potentially to get back to where you're at right now. So I don't know that you can, go wholesale on it. Now, if it's clearly not working, that's one thing. Like Brooklyn, that was not going to work. Okay. And so they made some quick decisions on that, and Durant's gone and Harden's with Philadelphia and all the changes that they made. That's a different situation. Philadelphia doesn't feel like a no chance this will never work type of situation. I think you get a couple of role players, and you probably are going to have to make a change at coach. And yeah, I still think Philadelphia could win a title. You're taking a lot of risk in Embiid's health, but like, it's just wild today because I see it all over the place. I saw it and heard it, last night. Like, Philadelphia is just this massive, colossal disappointment. And like, no, they lost a game 7 on the road to the favorite to win the title. Like, that's not a colossal disappointment. They
I also wonder
exactly as far as they should have.
I also wonder, is it a bigger risk to lean on Joel Embiid and his health, or is it a bigger risk to lean on James Harden and his consistency? Like, those are kind of the two questions. Like, I don't know. And honestly, I think Embiid, when healthy, I mean, clearly he's an MVP, right? Harden, I think had a massive opportunity, and you and I have talked about it at length, had a massive opportunity to help his legacy out by coming into Philly and getting them over the hump and getting them to, potentially an Eastern Conference Finals and maybe even an NBA final. And when it mattered most in a game 7, Harden wasn't good. And so I don't know if that, I think one of the worst things you can do is you take one game, even if it's a crucial deciding game 7, and then you apply it to an overall narrative about a guy's career. But in this case, I think Harden had the chance to really show everybody, hey, this was the right move for Philly to bring me in, because with me and Embiid and the role players around us, we can take this team to the finals. He wasn't able to get it done.
Yeah. And it's, I have to be careful myself with the NBA because it's defended and coached at a level that goes, I think, beyond basic comprehension. So I don't, Boston, in all likelihood, had a really good plan to hold him down. There's some of that, right? And there's
Al Horford was outstanding defensively for the Celtics.
And then there's some of, like, you still have to step up in the big moments if you're really that guy. Like, they both of those things exist in the NBA. So sometimes I have a hard time, but we've seen it for a long time, right? Out of Harden. Like, you don't think Philadelphia came into the game and said, guys, we can't let Jason Tatum kill us. And he did it anyway, right? So, I mean, there's some difference there. Jason Tatum wasn't even an MVP candidate, but would Jason Tatum be in the top 3 players you would take if you had to start a team right now? He'd be real close if he's not.
Yeah, he'd be right up there.
I mean, that's what's wild. Like, in Boston, look, I don't think that we just saw, no matter how game 7 went, I don't think it's, this is the end of this era for this team. Now, Boston's going to have some financial ramifications to deal with because Tatum and Brown are both Supermax players, because Brown was named to the all NBA team. So they're going to have to deal with that. But so there is a little urgency, I think, in Boston. I don't know that Brown's going to be able to stick around there, but you've got Tatum, you've got your star. He's 25. He's incredible. Philadelphia is closer to the end of theirs than Boston is. I'll say that, but I don't think Philadelphia is at the end of theirs at all. I think that, they'll probably make a change at coach, and then it just becomes, can you find that perfect, free agent? Can you find a diamond in the rough? Can you get that one piece? Because Philadelphia feels close to me. Everybody laughed at the James Harden thing, but I think it's gone pretty well. Harden is a good fit with Embiid, I think.
I also wonder, assuming that they make a change with Doc Rivers, who would be the right coach for Philly to help try to get them over the edge? Is it somebody young and up and coming? Is it somebody who's on the sideline right now, like, that's looking for a head coaching job, like a Budenholzer, or even a Monty Williams? I don't know. Like, there are a couple of really
Nick
high
Nurse,
caliber coaches.
Adrian
Nick Nurse
Griffin
is looking for a job.
mean,
Like, there are a
I would.
handful of guys that are out there and then also, if you're a franchise looking for a coach, do you make a call to Doc Rivers? I mean, based on his history and his longevity in the league, or are you afraid of him because he has a hard time taking it all the way?
I'm not hiring Doc Rivers if I'm Phoenix or Milwaukee, but if I'm a young team that needs somebody there to help grow, I would absolutely hire Doc Rivers. But not if I'm on the precipice of a championship, right? Like not where these teams are. Adrian Griffin's name, the Wichita native, becomes very interesting. We know that, he was the leader for the job in Toronto, where he's been an assistant. We've heard that Milwaukee has interest. I would be curious to see if Phoenix and if Philadelphia comes open, if they have interest. What's interesting about all those teams as it comes to Griffin and why Toronto probably still makes the most sense is because those are all teams next year that are going to expect to compete for an NBA title. I would think that makes it a little tougher for Griffin, right? Because he hasn't had the head coaching job before. But his pedigree and his style, his defensive, prowess plays well for some of those teams and like what they need and what could put them over the edge. It's tricky. He hasn't had he had Kawhi Leonard there for just a very brief moment, but he also hasn't dealt with a like big high ticket, high profile superstar for a long period of time either. So it's an interesting situation for him to think about and where he might be able to land. Hopefully, I still think Toronto makes way too much sense just to elevate him there. But it's an interesting spot. Doc Rivers, if it happens, I bet it happens today. But we'll see.
How interesting would it be to watch Adrian Griffin be teamed up with Giannis, or Adrian Griffin teamed up with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant? Like, there are some really cool potential matchups. I don't know. I do think that Toronto is probably the most likely landing spot for Adrian Griffin, but man, the possibilities are out there where it could be a lot of fun.
See, and I think Philadelphia makes more sense than Phoenix or Milwaukee. If I'm talking about Adrian Griffin, like I like the idea of him coming in there and them just becoming this lockdown defensive team, and maybe you get some revelation for James Harden to become a full-time great defender, and then you could really see at that point you could have something that other teams don't. But it's interesting. Game 7 goes Boston's way. We get the NBA playoffs now into the conference finals. I don't think, let me just take a quick look. I don't think we get one tonight. Yeah, we have to wait till tomorrow, and that's when we get the start of Lakers Nuggets, which is, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I am fascinated by that series. 869-1240 is the number to call on the IHOP hotline. You can also leave your comments on our video stream. We can see those there as well. We will continue. Wichita State softball. We know where they're headed for the postseason. We'll talk about it next.
are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor. We got Wichita State softball and a at-large bid for the 2023 NCAA tournament. Very good to see them back in the postseason. Certainly, I think, Tommy, not where we expected things to go in the conference tournament with a loss to Tulsa. That stunned us. That definitely stunned us, but that's where we are. Now the Shockers softball team goes to Stillwater, and they will take on first Nebraska and Oklahoma State, certainly the other team. Wichita State has a couple wins over them this year. I think all things considered, this is, if they weren't going to host, which kind of went off the table here with a couple late stumbles late in the year, this is pretty good. This is what you wanted. You wanted Stillwater. And so, all things considered, I think things will be all right.
Yeah, honestly, I like the draw. I think it's about as good as you could have hoped for after stumbling in the American tournament against Tulsa. The Shockers have shown that they can beat Oklahoma State. They've done it a couple different times this season, right? Nebraska, they can beat Nebraska. They have beaten Nebraska. So I like the draw overall. Of course, you would have loved to have a home regional. I think they came up just a little bit short, although I don't even know if they had won the conference tournament, if we'd be talking about the potential of them hosting or not. Regardless of that, I think it's a good draw because ultimately they could have ended up in the Norman regional, and that would have been a lot more difficult for them. So I like this draw. I like their path to a super regional. They could potentially play Arkansas in a super regional. They've beaten Arkansas this season. So I like the overall path for them. We just need to see consistency out of them in their pitching. And I think that we'll be talking about them hopefully going to a super regional.
Yeah, I agree. And here's what I don't like, though, that they've scored 2 runs in their last 2 games against Kansas and Tulsa. And that, that's what has them here now, 2 losses in a row. The momentum heading into the postseason is not there. And that's a really interesting dynamic because it's always there, right? Like they have so much swag and they very rarely lose and all these things, but all of a sudden you enter a postseason and it's like, okay, well, we're coming off of back-to-back losses, which I don't know that they had. Is that the first time they had back-to-back losses? I'm going to check this real quick.
I think so.
Yeah. So the only time they've had they had one very early in the year, Texas State and San Diego State, like very, very early in the year. So since February 12th or 16th or whatever it is, Wichita State has not lost back-to-back games. They very rarely lost any games, but yet here they come into the postseason with back-to-back losses. And let's be real. Tulsa, no disrespect to them. That's just not a game you need to be losing, especially, on a neutral field situation, that kind of thing. So they've got to get it together offensively. Because the pitching has been great, right? The pitching has been good even in those games. The pitching, Tommy, hasn't given up more than 2 runs since April 16th in the finale loss against Houston there. So, for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games now, it's been 2 or fewer runs. And so that's what's got to be, that's what's got to be there. We know that. But the offense also has to pick it up. They've scored 4 runs in those 2 losses. That's what's been so sort of shocking, for lack of a better term, is where'd the offense go all of a sudden?
Yeah. Yeah. And on top of that, too, they really hadn't had much of an issue with Tulsa throughout the regular season. But for whatever reason, in the conference tournament, they could not get the bats going at all. And that's what led them to getting down in that tournament.
Conference tournaments are weird, especially when you're not playing for your postseason life. But, they had to think that they still had a chance to host a regional. So it's not like they didn't have anything to play for. They certainly did. Not that they would have to have that anyway. But, we'll see. I mean, hopefully, Tommy, in a week, we won't even remember the conference tournament or care about it because they've had a really nice regional. And so we go to Stillwater. That's a place they're comfortable with. No big deal, right? No big problem. They've won in Stillwater. They've beaten Oklahoma State in Stillwater. They've beaten Oklahoma State twice, so that part of it, they'll be fine. It's just you got to go. I'm more worried, honestly, at the moment right now, Tommy. I'm more worried about Nebraska because it's like, we got to get it together here because this is going to be a postseason caliber team. Like, don't worry yet about Oklahoma State. Let's worry first about Nebraska and getting things back on track before that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't look ahead, right? You have to go after the opponent that's right in front of you. That being said, objectively, just looking at the statistics throughout the year, Shocker softball is a better overall program than Nebraska, right?
Oh, sure.
That being said, the momentum is not there for Wichita State right this second, at least offensively. So, I don't know if you can just chalk up the regular season finale and the opening round of the conference tournament as fluky, and the bats will come around. Once you get into the regional, I don't know if you can chalk it up to that or not, or if we're looking at potentially a concerning trend. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm ready to go in either direction right now.
No, I don't think it's.
I think
the
the jury is still out one way or another on that.
Yeah. No, I don't want to overreact like that. It's not a concerning trend. It's just that, like, right now, like, there's urgency in it. Like, you have to fix this quickly because we think about Stillwater and we think about going there and it's like, okay, it's Oklahoma State. It's Nebraska first. Like, we just lost to Tulsa on a neutral. Like, you gotta, get it going.
I mean, regardless, it doesn't matter what
State.
Regional you're going to. You're going to be playing high quality teams, right?
That's
it doesn't matter where you end up.
That's what I'm
and
talking
where you're
about.
seated. I mean, there's a reason you're making it into the NCAA tournament. You're a good, solid program. So even though objectively, I think statistically, it just shows that Wichita State is an objectively better program than Nebraska, doesn't mean that something wild can't happen in the regional. You got to handle your business in the opening round.
All right, so we have they'll start things on Friday. They'll play at 6:00, which is the second game of the two there in Stillwater. Oklahoma State, the other team in the regional is UMBC. All right, baseball. They got a series win, which was nice to see. They come back home. They get 2 wins on Saturday. They fall on Friday, but they take the series. They're not going to win the league. That's pretty much off the table now. So they. It's not completely off the table, I don't think, but it's pretty much off the table, right? And so we don't think about that as like it's a ticket. You got to win the conference tournament. You got to get in, and you got to win the conference tournament, and it's pretty much that simple, Tommy. For Wichita State, they do have one more series to go. They got to go to Orlando and play Central Florida, and I do think it matters like where they finish in the league a little bit, Tommy. Like you definitely want to see them get in and finish high in the league. And right now they're in third all by themselves. Like, nothing. You don't want to see anything because UCF, by the way, is 3 games behind them in fourth. So you don't like go get swept or anything. But Wichita State baseball sort of in this holding pattern to get ready for whatever its postseason looks like, which may just be the AAC, but not if they can win it. And I think that they absolutely have shown us this year that they are capable of winning the conference tournament because they've swept East Carolina. If they can do that, they can win this conference tournament.
Well, I mentioned it on Friday. The Shocker baseball squad that we saw in March can absolutely win the conference tournament. The Shocker squad we've seen in April, I don't know. I'm not so sure. I'm not ready to say that yet. Although they did have a really good series over the weekend, and Peyton Tolley is a monster, and Brock Rodden is playing fantastic. And so if you can get, those guys and pitching from guys like Clark Candiotti and others, Peyton Tolley, on the mound as well, if you can get those guys locked in the conference tournament, then yeah, I mean, clearly this team has shown that they can make runs and get hot and fire on all cylinders. I will say though, and this might sound a little moral victory-ish, but I'm not sure any of us would have even suggested that this squad would have been in this position at this point in the season at the very beginning when Eric Wedge left the team and Lauren Hibbs took over. I know that the job's not done. The objective is to win conference championships and go to the postseason. I get all that. But I certainly wouldn't have projected them in third place all by themselves this late in the season. But here we are. They've shown they can beat East Carolina. And so if you end up facing them in the conference tournament, you know you can beat them. You've done it before. So here we go. Let's see what ends up happening in this final regular season series in Orlando against UCF, and then get into the conference tournament, go and win that tournament, and try to make it into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much it. Look, it's going to be really exciting. Like the conference tournament for softball was like, okay, yeah, they need to win it if they want to keep. But baseball,
Right.
I mean, that's pretty much the NCAA tournament starts on.
And don't you kind of like that a little bit? You know exactly what the objective is.
I do.
You know, there's not a whole lot of, I wonder what could happen if we do this. This could happen. Literally, you win the tournament, you're in.
Well,
I like
you
don't win the tournament, you're out.
I like it when you think that you've actually got a shot to win it, right? Like I don't like it as much when it's like you stink and you got to get. No, this feels like something that if they play their best version of baseball, that they could get through. So yes, I do like it because I think they're capable of winning it. 869-1240 is that number to call. It's Albracht and Castor. That's the IHOP hotline. Your thoughts. We'll make our way through. There's some expansion news we want to get through in just a little bit. All kinds of good stuff on the slate today. Is Sports Daily on a Monday. Major League turn a loss into a win with BetMGM, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Place a one-game parlay wager with at least 4 legs on any MLB game. If all legs of the parlay hit but one, you'll get your stake back in bonus bets up to $25. Just log onto your account, download the app, sign up with BetMGM to get started, then opt into the one-game parlay insurance promotion to receive up to $25 back in bonus bets if your parlay with 4 legs or more loses by just 1 leg. Only at BetMGM, the place to bet on baseball. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. 21 years of age or older to wager. Kansas only. New and existing customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Welcome back, everybody. It was a weekend of baseball. The Texas Rangers just keep on winning. Here we go. I don't want to alarm anybody or overreact to anybody's whatever you're watching in baseball. But selfishly here, this has been quite a baseball season, Tommy, here for me, who hasn't had one in a while because the Royals can't figure it out. And my Rangers just, hopefully are done with this rebuild now.
Yeah, I mean, literally, they're playing better than I think they have in maybe a decade. It's been a long time, right? Since the Rangers have had
almost a
start to a season this good. I mean, 10 games over 500 through the first 40. And you'll take that, right? And especially in a division where you're, going against the Astros and you've got Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani in your division.
Seattle's
the Mariners are upstarts. Yeah, I mean, come on now. Like it seems like the investments that the Rangers have made are starting to pay off finally.
So here I bring it up because we got $100 on them to win. My dad wanted to do that for the kids and like this college fund and all this stuff. And it was like at 50 to 1 odds. So you can do the math, 5,000. Made $100 bet. They're offering me 107.36, Tommy, over at BetMGM. They're getting scared.
Cash it out, baby.
They're getting scared. They're shaking. I don't blame them. Here we go. By the way, did you see this? Did you see we were talking Wichita State, baseball and softball, and if you missed it over the weekend, Wichita State track and field had just an unbelievable comeback yesterday on the men's side. They overcame a projected 38-point deficit to Houston on the final day of competition to claim their second straight outdoor championship, which is just fantastic. Big congratulations to them. But a 38-point deficit on the final day of competition. Tip of the cap, big time. Shout out to Steve Rainbolt and those guys for what they were able to accomplish. Man, that is wild. That was not a projected finish. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, incredible. I was watching the updates come through on Twitter yesterday, and it seemed like every 5 or 10 minutes there was another update. And I'm like, all right, here we go. I mean, it's a pretty good start to the day. And then another update, and then another update. And I'm like, holy crap, this is going to happen. They're going to come back and they're going to beat Houston. They're going to claim this championship. And they were able to do that. So hats off to Shocker Track and Field.
I did not see it coming. Like, it wasn't on my radar at all, right? It was just like, whoa, they did what? That is really, really wild. So congratulations to them on that. Maybe we can track down Rainbolt this week and get him in. Now I'm trying to see because they'll send. Okay, so according to the Nationals, I was just looking at their next step of the postseason. Shockers will send 12 athletes to the NCAA West preliminaries, which comes May 24th through 27th in Sacramento. So that's what's next for them. But that's back-to-back, just an amazing accomplishment. And, as big as track and field is here, and with renovations coming to Cessna Stadium, which were sort of Kevin Saul to the media last week, not here, but, in a Zoom call, sort of laid out the roadmap, and they'll begin those renovations like right away. As soon as the high school meet finishes this year, they'll do a phase of that construction. And then after a high school meet next year, they'll do another phase, and then they'll begin the bigger phases of, expanding things and getting things ready to take on a soccer program. So there's a lot going on. But, the program itself is very healthy right now. The women, by the way, finished 7th at this meet was out at USF for the conference, but Could you imagine? Like, look at the team picture. You can see it. You can either go to Go Shockers or whatever, and just look at the team picture of the guys holding up those championship trophies. I mean, could you imagine being that far back and a comeback? And I'm not. Look, I'm not track and field guy. I have grown to love track and field so much more since we moved here because it is such a big deal here, and I love it. Like the high school state track meet is just a blast. But that just seems ridiculous. It's just like out of this world. Can't even believe it.
So cool. And it's so much fun. I followed, Kevin Saul, and I followed him for a long time on social media, but watching him, tweet yesterday, the congratulations to the track and field squad. I mean, clearly, that's a sport that, I mean, they work so hard and they're practicing nonstop. And, just the amount of effort that it takes to have that huge come from behind victory. I mean, come on now. Like, that's just incredible to watch. And so congratulations to them.
All right, let's go to the IHOP hotline. I believe, Max, right? We've got Scott on the line. Scott, what's up?
Good morning, guys. I'm a little perplexed with something I saw this weekend. There was a blurb that came through that said Tom Brady was going to purchase make a small ownership purchase of the Raiders.
Yes.
Now, let me figure something out here. I've been watching that game him play for 20 years. Didn't he already own him?
Oh, there it is. Scott with a good one-liner
Love that
on a Monday. Yeah. He did. That's good, Scott. I like that.
I needed that laugh today. That's a good one. Thank you, Scott.
This Monday sucks. Can I just say that this Monday sucks?
You were telling me that you've got like your phone ringing nonstop off the hook. I'm like answering emails left and right of things that are coming through. It's a busy Monday.
This is not a cool Monday. I haven't eaten in a while. I have no coffee to help me get through. Like no coffee. I think I might be more dependent on coffee than like anything in my life. And I don't drink it like all day. But like if I don't have that coffee when I wake up, it's like game over for that whole day. Like if I don't, when we're on the road and traveling, sometimes my wife makes money and she's like, I'm like, I've got to find it. So I don't care if it's instant, whatever. I don't care. I got to have something. It is like whatever that is. Like I clearly have like a chemical issue here, but
we have one of those in my office where I work. We have one of those like fancy coffee machines where you can pick the different drinks that you want and it'll spit it out. So during the break, I went to go get a cup of coffee and I've got the one that I really like and press the button, get the cup underneath it, and it just shoots out water, just hot water. There's nothing. I'm like, great, perfect. On a Monday, there we go. What do I expect?
Is this Monday? Like, look, I am so grateful for the rain. I don't know if that's like some sign of things. Like, I love that it's raining. I love that it's been raining. We've needed it so desperately. But just like Monday it's like a drop kick in the face. Like, what did we do to deserve this Monday? I don't know. It's killing me. I'm dying. I just need some food and some coffee. Gotta go get my blood drawn in a little bit. What's happening? 869-1240. We appreciate it. Scott, thank you for the one-liner there. Again, the whole point of that Monday gripe was we needed that today. So that was a good one. Well played, sir. Max Power producing for us. IHOP hotline wide open in hour number 2. We got all kinds of fun stuff coming for you. There's an expansion and realignment story out on Sports Illustrated right now that is just really interesting. We're going to dive into it because there's a lot there to get through. That's when we return on Sports Daily.
You're listening to Sports Daily with Jacob and Tommy. Still to come, Jim Rome at 11, right here on KFH.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody, to hour number 2 of Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor doing our best to struggle through this Monday. This Monday is coming out hot here. 869-1240, the IHOP hotline is the number to call. You can be in touch with us on our video streams as well. You can find them on Facebook and YouTube on the KFH pages. You can also see us on Twitter at Sports Daily Twitter page. So all kinds of good stuff. We talked a little bit about Wichita State baseball, softball, track, busy weekend for the Shockers. Went back through Game 7. We may touch again on Game 7 a little later in this hour. But Tommy, we kicked this hour going here with a topic I think that interests us all the time and is always at the forefront of their mind, and that's college realignment. It so clearly impacts so much of, what happens around here with KU, K-State, maybe even Wichita State. And Sports Illustrated put out a big article, a long, lengthy, in-depth. Ross Dellinger put it out there as 2 weeks ago. It's sort of his take on a big expansion meeting. All the conferences are there. It's just whatever. And like all these interested parties, right? Like there's the Big 12 and Brett Yormark and the ultra aggressive nature. There's the Pac-12 sort of still in a survival mode. But then a lot of what's really interesting, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff. So we'll just sort of make our way through it. But there's a lot of the elephant in the room here to me is and has been for a while the ACC, Tommy. I don't know what all this looks like. I no longer think that it's likely we get to a scenario where the SEC and Big Ten live in a different place than whatever else is remaining and whatever that looks like. I think the Big 12, because they gambled correctly, did their deal first, is in a position to at least be stable for a little bit. But I say this all the time, like I'm so happy that Brett Yormark is being so aggressive even now still, because that's not ultimately going to be good enough. I think it's good enough for now, right? The new media deal, but it's not ultimately going to be good enough. And the only thing that ensures that survival is massive expansion and growth. And I think that's what the Big 12 is trying to do. So you got their strategy there. You've got the Pac-12, which is still just, maybe San Diego State, maybe SMU, just sort of try to still exist as it always has and finish out this new TV negotiating deal, which again, we don't know a lot about other than they're saying it's going to be bigger. But if it's bigger, by how much, and are they all streaming, which we know schools don't want to do that. So there's that. And then there's the ACC. And, the ACC is just kind of stuck. And we know we know that people are unhappy. Florida State and Clemson, very publicly so, with the TV deal that they're, currently in the middle of, which by a lot of attorneys that chime in on it is pretty airtight on this grant of rights deal. And, $120 million buyouts. Like, who can afford that? I don't know, but there's nowhere else to go for the ACC right now. There's no networks going to renegotiate or do anything. ESPN's laying off people right and left. Like, who's going to step up to the table right now in that world and like present this massive television package? Or if you're the ACC, like expand what you already have. Like, why would ESPN grow that? They already have it, So I don't know where this stands, but the ACC is the big chip right now. And I'm curious to know what Brett Yormark is doing on that side of the world. And it's probably, we haven't heard as much, Tommy, in the short term because they've got such a ironclad and long TV deal still in place, but that's going to be the domino, I think, that changes everything.
They've certainly been insulated throughout a lot of this entire process, right? Like, we haven't heard, much about the ACC losing a lot of teams or, being aggressive one way or another. They've been pretty steady and pretty solid. And I wonder what the overall perceived value of the ACC as a conference actually is. And, where do you rank it among, I mean, obviously SEC number one and then probably Big Ten. Then do you put the ACC there? Do you put the Big 12 there? What happens if you've got some kind of, alliance between the two conferences? I don't really know. But I do know that as of now, all of the major dominoes that have fallen thus far in conference realignment really haven't impacted the ACC a whole lot yet. And I think the key word there is yet, because I think eventually that might happen, because you've got schools, in the ACC that, could potentially be ripe for the pickings, like a Clemson or a Florida State or something like that, that could be very valuable to other conferences with the football product. So, I think that there are opportunities there with the ACC, and just because there hasn't been a whole lot of movement with that conference so far doesn't mean that it's not to come.
It is. We've heard Florida State and Clemson, who I think are the two biggest power players. I mean, you got North Carolina and some others in there, but they very publicly voiced displeasure. And, this article, it's not like at the commissioner or anything like that. It's just like money. Like they're just kind of stuck in this deal. And, for Florida State and Clemson, who I would assume could be, potential targets of the SEC or the Big Ten. I mean, $120 million buyout fee is probably worth it, at some point here to pull the trigger on if you're those schools, because you can go earn just so much more money in these other conferences. So, there's that element to it. There's a timing element to it, because the hardest thing about all of this, and this is what the Pac-12 is dealing with right now, we just need a little time to react, but there isn't any. And even more than the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 is up against a very real deadline at the moment of now. The ACC faces a more false deadline that doesn't technically exist, but we all know it exists. Like, we all know it's there. The current state of things isn't going to stand. This is why the Big 12 was so smart. Like, the networks made their plays on the SEC and the Big 10, and the Big 12 kind of picked up the scraps. Like, here's what's left, right? And I'm not saying that derogatorily. Like, they did that well. Like, they got a really nice deal on broadcast television, right? In a place where fans are going to be able to see all the games. It will certainly enhance the profile of the league, like all of those things. And I just don't know what's going to be there for the Pac-12. And then there's the drama pointed out in the article, Tommy, like the infighting of like the Big 12's interested in UNLV. Why? Because George Kliakoff, the Pac-12 commissioner, is a Las Vegas native who, the Pac-12 is trying to like get their footprint out to Vegas. And then, well, the Pac-12 wants to add SMU. Why? Because the Big 12 is headquartered in Dallas. Like, it's just like, what? I don't know. Like, I wouldn't have the energy for it. But I do think expansion is key. I've said this for 3 years now. Whenever it was that we learned, like, Texas and Oklahoma were leaving. I mean, my first instant thought is, oh my God, you better get so big that this doesn't happen again. And the Big 12 is taking that approach now. And they really want to poach Pac-12. And the question across the industry, and you can find whichever report, whichever way you want to find it, is that either, the Pac-12 hangs tight, does a small expansion, or that the Big 12 poaches, and like everybody's confident they're going to do one or the other, right? There's not really any, like, everybody believes what they want to believe on this. I don't know, but I know the Pac-12 adding San Diego State and SMU, and like that's it, and they get a streaming deal like that. You're dead in the water at that point.
Yeah.
Well, it might get it done for like 2 years or whatever, but you're toast long term if that's your answer. You have got to, like, in a perfect world, the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and I said this a long time ago too, and the ACC would have just formed their own super league and had a West, Central, East, or however you want to split it up, and just say, forget you guys. Like, we're going to have our own, deal here, because I don't know what else you can do if you're the Pac-12 other than expand greatly. It's going to either be expand greatly or die. I mean, that's it. Those are your two options.
Yeah. And digging your heels in the ground and saying, we're not going to do, this aggressive expansion. We're going to add schools that fit the pedigree of the Pac-12. It's stupid. We've said that for months. That is a stupid strategy. I don't particularly care about SMU all that much. That being said, though, it's always been a little surprising to me that the Big 12 didn't gobble them up. because you have the built-in rivalry with TCU a little bit, right there in the same metro area. Historically, they've had an okay football product. There have been a couple years they've had a decent basketball product. So that was a little surprising to me.
SMU's
I guess
not a needle mover, though, right?
No, it's not. But in the announcement with the American that you're grabbing UCF and you're adding BYU, like SMU, okay, like that would have been fine. I would have been okay with that. It's not a huge deal to me. I don't think it moves the needle for the Big 12 by itself, and it certainly doesn't move the needle for the Pac-12 by itself either. Even if you're adding San Diego State with SMU, doesn't really do a whole lot for me.
Yeah, I mean, San Diego State does do a lot for me, and I really, really, really want the Big 12 to get them. But like, you got to understand when the Big 12 expands and adds Houston and Cincinnati, they're adding some massive enrollments and in different areas, like where are they targeting, right? You're targeting South Florida. University of Cincinnati's enrollment, Tommy, is like 40,000, right? Houston's even bigger. I think Cincinnati's undergrad as of 2021 was just under 30,000, and then it goes up. SMU's got like 10,000 kids, right? And I know it's in Dallas, but they've already got small schools. They've already got TCU and Baylor. Like, I don't think you're moving the ratings needle in the Dallas market.
Is it the enrollment or is it the size of the market? Like, I think it can be both. And I think you can make up a little bit for the lack of enrollment by the large market that you're in and the built-in rivalry with TCU and all of that, right? Like, I think that that helps a little bit. It's not the end all be all, but I think it helps a little bit.
It's facilities, and I don't know a lot about SMU's facilities, but it's facilities. It's, they already own the Dallas market. So the urgency, like if you're trying to expand your footprint, and maybe the SMU's a candidate someday, I don't know. But
there's a lot of money at that university too, right? You've got a private university. I mean, that's a fairly wealthy university.
But let me just tell you, like, as somebody that grew up in Texas, SMU has like no footprint, right? It's where all the rich kids go. I mean, and that is, I'm not saying that like as an offense or anything. It's like, that's what it is. Like, for me, who grew up and like, if I had to power rank the relevance of SMU athletics in the state of Texas, it's not very relevant. It's just not. And it's a place where that's really expensive, and, rich kids go to school. So like you've got even like, and look, Baylor may have been in that same boat in TCU a long time ago when they got added, but that's not the reality anymore, right? And now, since they've been added, of course, they've grown their profile, and they're these massive, sports juggernauts. TCU, for God's sakes, just played in the national championship game. But it was, it's very different, I think, when you're looking at expansion and you're going into, Tampa or Orlando, I should say, I guess, and Houston and Cincinnati and places you aren't currently. When the Big 12, think about when the Big 12 lost Texas and Texas A&M, like Houston's kind of down there on an island now. I'm talking about the city of. So that's very much a move of, now we have to get into this major television market again, because most people in that part of the state are either Texas or Texas A&M fans. And so you got to get something there. And they did a good job. Houston's got just a massive enrollment, by the way. And I think a growing, obviously, fan base and everything else. So when you talk about San Diego State or UNLV, like, are you kidding me? Go get them. Go get into those markets, because what we know is that brands will grow, right, as they join these big leagues. TCU and Baylor are great examples of that. Like, once you get in there, your profile grows tremendously, right away. Look at what UCF did with Jaquan Walton. That's the player that was the number one team in the country went after. Now UCF's got him.
Here's my point, though, and when I say that San Diego State and SMU, it doesn't really move the needle for the Pac-12. What I mean by that is those two institutions, if that's all the Pac-12 is going to do, that doesn't move the needle. That doesn't save the conference. But if you're going and getting San Diego State and UNLV, if you're the Big 12, you're getting those schools in addition to who you've already went and got at Houston, Cincinnati, Memphis, UCF, BYU. Okay, like that at that point, all right, I can get on board with that because that's an aggressive expansion in multiple time zones across the country where you've got windows of opportunity there, basically from sun up to sundown. I'm okay with that. The Pac-12, they're not willing to be, at least as of now, aggressive in their expansion efforts. And if they're only going after San Diego State and UNLV potentially, okay, doesn't really move it for me.
Chris says he agrees they need to get bigger schools in other regions, looking at the West Coast and mountain regions. Mike asks, can leagues get too big for their own good? I don't think in the current landscape that anybody's going to be in danger of getting too big, Mike. Yes, you can, but it's not going to come into play, I don't think, here. I agree, Tommy. Needle mover for the Pac-12, SMU and San Diego State, no. SMU, maybe. San Diego State, no, because you're already there, right? Like you already own that. Now, Big 12, it is a needle mover. The Big 12 needs to get west. Going to San Diego and Vegas, if you talk about UNLV, that's two great places to go, right? Like you're not getting into LA at this point. They're gone. You're not getting into, wherever, but you can sure get into San Diego and you can sure get into Vegas and do both of those things. The Big 12 in Vegas, I mean, it's got to happen. It's got to happen. And whether they've got a school located there or not, I can almost guarantee you, just like the rest of the world, Vegas will factor into the Big 12's plans of something at some point. That's just the way things are going right now. And so I don't know what else is out there that in Vegas that you could get a hold of, but if UNLV will join the league, I think UNLV's profile can grow in the Big 12 for sure. And go get them. If they're not a great football program, that's okay, because they're probably going to be a great basketball program if they're a Big 12 team, I would guess. And then you're in Vegas. And San Diego, to me, is a no-brainer. Like, San Diego is starved for something right now. They lost the Chargers. They're going nuts for the Padres because it's what's there. You got a basketball team that just played for a natty. I think my wife is from San Diego. I think they would be all for and get very excited to join the Big 12 because now you got something to go nuts for again. And you got all these great games every year and all that stuff. Heck yeah, go for San Diego State. Can the Big 12 compete with the Pac-12 for San Diego State? I don't know. I'm very interested in that question. And then if you're the Pac-12, you have to worry about the four corner schools, which the Big 12 has very publicly been gunning for a long time now.
Hey, look, I think that the Pac-12, there is a real likelihood with San Diego State, in my mind, where they could be overly desperate to get San Diego State. And then at that point, it makes it really difficult to compete with them. I think that eventually the Pac-12, I would think at least, they haven't done it so far, but at least at some point potentially come to their senses and think, man, we're going to get left in the dust. We got to go do something. And maybe they go a little bit too aggressive, a little bit desperate for San Diego State. I would be surprised if the Big 12 is actually able to land San Diego State, just because I think the Pac-12 will say, look, we got to have you. We'll do whatever it takes to get you.
I don't know, what is, if you're San Diego State and you got two offers on the table, one's from the Pac-12 and one's from the Big 12. You got to think long and hard about the Big 12. I know that geographically, like there are probably a lot of like old school, people that would be like, oh, this is our dream come true. It's what we've been waiting for forever. We're going to be in the Pac-12. But you have to see the writing on the wall. And that's sort of in this article. And the reason it puts it back to the forefront, you have to see that there's not a lot of confidence in the Pac-12's ultimate survival here. Like if they survive, it feels like it's only going to be just like for just a little bit longer before their fate is ultimately sealed, because they seem so resistant to large scale growth for some reason. I can't figure it out. Like, why on earth would you be resistant to this? Look at the Big 12 before and look at the Big 12 now, and the perception and the difference and all of those things. Why? Because they went and added 3 AAC schools? No, is because they're very public in their desire to grow and get bigger. The Pac-12 is very public in their desire to dig a hole in the sand, put up a flag and say nobody allowed, right? Like, we're here. We've got our academic research standards and we have blah, blah, blah that that has nothing to do with athletics. And guess what? If you want to stay relevant and make money, you're going to have to worry about athletics. I love education. All that stuff is critical, but it doesn't put butts in the seats, right? Like that's just the reality of it.
I wholeheartedly believe that George Klavikov and the Pac-12, they believe that this realignment era that we're in right now is a passing fad. It's a trend. It's going to go away, and if we just dig our heels in and just hunker down and get through it, the storm will pass and they will rise on the other side. And that's not going to happen. And I think that everybody in America outside of the Pac-12 understands that's not going to happen. This is the way that college athletics is now. This realignment and this getting bigger and the SEC getting stronger, the Big Ten getting stronger, the Big 12 aggressively expanding. It's not going away. It's going to continue. And you cannot dig your heels in and just pretend that it's not going on. It's not happening. And then expect that you're going to be okay in the long run.
It's not. And God help him if that's what they really think. I don't know. But so the ACC. So anyway, like let's take a quick break and we'll come back and we'll talk about the ACC, because that's really where this gets interesting, big picture, because I think what happens in the ACC could be the final settling of things. And I've thought that forever. Like, I do think that it'll be chaotic for a little while longer. But then I think ultimately, like, once this gets settled through, we're kind of there, right, for a while. And the ACC is going to be the ticket to that. How fast that happens becomes the most interesting thing. But what could happen? SI rolls out a couple of different scenarios. We'll talk through them as we continue to talk college expansion on a Monday edition of Sports Daily. Albracht and Castor, IHOP hotline wide open, 869-1240. Good discussion happening right now in the comments on our video streams if you want to join in there. We'll be right back with more right after this.
And be able to carry on conversations with coach.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here with you on this Monday edition. We're talking a little realignment. The Sports Illustrated, Ross Dellinger, put out an extensive article on some meetings that happened recently and just sort of how everything's playing through. You know, we talked Big 12, Pac-12 is obviously a big part of that. The ACC is the other big part of this. They have a long deal. It's another 13 years, but they're way behind the SEC and the Big Ten in what they're getting. And, you know, as you can understand, the schools there are like, what, I mean, what, you know, what's happening right now? How are we going to do this? We can't do this for 13 more years. So something's going to happen. But, you know, the options that are laid out in this article are, number one, seek additional revenue from ESPN. There's no way that's going to happen right now. ESPN is neck deep in trying to get other leagues. They've invested all this money. They're laying people off like every other media company, big media company seems to be doing. And then there's, you know, the option number two of teams seceding from the league and paying the $120 million exit fee, which, if it's to the, you know, to the Big Ten or the ACC, is probably a decent thing to consider. Like if you're, you know, Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, whatever, and one of those leagues wants you, you can get, you know, you're going to make up that money over 13 years, right? Which is what you're stuck in now. Option three then is create another league. Then there's an option, which is probably not a real option either. And then there's a fourth option he just says that could be, you know, discussed, and that's changing a revenue distribution model to a merit-based system, which is just like, oh my God.
That's never going to happen.
Well, I mean, even if they get there, again, these are all Band-Aids, right? Like everything we just laid out outside of secede from the league to me at the moment seems like a Band-Aid. There is not going to be, in the ultimate dust set, and this is where I always have to really think about this topic, like, where does this all end, right? Like, what is the end of this? And I don't think the end of this is a Power Five, right? The end of this isn't going to be the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC all competing like on a level field. That's not the end. Now, do I think that it's going to be the, you know, the SEC and the Big 10 and then everybody else does their thing? No, I don't think that either. What I think is some universities will rise up, right? And somehow, whether it's 2 or 1 league, I can't decide on what I think will happen. Whether there is 1 more league or 2 more leagues, I hope that there are 2. Like, I hope nobody that's currently in Power 5 athletics won't have a spot in Power 5 athletics. That to me is the worst case scenario. And that's what we feared, right, for Kansas State and Kansas. That's, that was the fear at that point. Like, well, God, we don't want them not playing at the highest level of college athletics.
I think the fear was real for Kansas because of how bad their football program was for a long time, like being left in the dust, where, they couldn't compete, at least on the field, with, the other programs because that football program was so bad for so long.
And there was, there was this thought that like, oh, well, they'll want us because of our basketball program, but that's not in the reality. That's not how that works. And right now, the only league that values basketball that way, quite frankly, appears to be the Big 12, which could be the thing that changes and saves all this if Brett Yormark's right about that. And that basketball, men's and women's, have this, separate value that's much greater. That could save all of this, because if schools realize that and the market plays that out, then you're going to see some survival. But we don't know that yet. That's still a pretty big risk. So I hope nobody goes down. But if everybody, to me, it's always needed to be that 3 other Power 5 leagues need to become 2 other Power 5 leagues. And if that can happen, I think we have a much, like, the math works better. In a playoff, it works better. Fitting in 4 instead of 5, the round number, like all of these things. And there is enough strength collectively between the 3 remaining leagues to come up with 2 really strong leagues, right? If not 1, if it's not going to be 1, which, probably isn't very likely, like 1 coast to coast league that, encompasses all of it. And it would be so big, though. It would be better to get it to 2. And how do you do that? Well, if you're the Big 12, you want to make sure you're driving the bus of one of those 2, and you go get everybody you can get on yours. And then probably whatever's left of the rest, which might mean, a lot of West Coast schools and a lot of East Coast schools and not a lot in between, that may need to be what happens. But I think I think that's where this ultimately gets, is instead of a Power 5, it's a Power 4. And that stuff's going to matter because right as it currently looks, one of those, 4 that's not the Big 12 looks like in a much better bargaining position. But if they can go, like, as soon as their sites clear West, and I think the only reason they're West right now is because the TV deal East is so much stronger and longer. They're going to do the same thing East. The Big 12 is going to go after some of those schools the same way they are right now West.
Can I throw out something also that I've thought about a lot during this process? What is the relevance in this new scenario that you're bringing up? What's the relevance of the NCAA as a governing body? I mean, because I think that you would have a league or a couple of leagues that could be more powerful than the NCAA. I think the SEC, the SEC is already in a position where they're more powerful. The member schools are more powerful than the NCAA as a governing body. So what would be so wrong with having, whether it's a Power 4 or a Power 2 or a Power 1? I think you can govern yourselves, right? Like, I don't necessarily think you need the NCAA as a governing body.
You do need something to try to level a playing field as much as you can, or at least have the perception of it. You do need an academic compliance arm. I mean, you just have to have that. And you need an organizing body. And think about the NCAA, Tommy, whose sole purpose is those things and how much it struggles with those things, right? Imagine conferences adding that onto their plate. So what is Brett Yormark now a compliance guy? Like, well, how does that happen? I do think, like, as much issue as I've got with the NCAA, and I have as much as anybody if you listen to this show, I do think its place is necessary. You do have to have a governing body, right? Like, you've got to have some collection and organization. And, well, number one, like, for all the other sports that aren't football and basketball, it's pretty critical, right? Like, you have to have these tournaments organized and put together and working with universities and cities and like all of that stuff. The conferences aren't equipped to handle all that. They just can't. If the NCAA can't, and that's what its only, purpose is basically, How would that add to the play? I just don't think there's any way. You'd have to have 4 different NCAAs basically if you went down that road, because they're going to have to try to get the same systems in place to be able to function anyway. There has to be a functioning body.
I don't know. I just think that there's an opportunity to, as you are working on a realignment and moving people in different places, to also redefine and reestablish what the overall governing body looks like for college athletics. And maybe that is the NCAA in its current form. But I think at this point, I mean, we've realized that all bets are off when it comes to, norms and traditions and things like that in conferences. Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, USC, UCLA going to the Big Ten, all these different changes that are happening. It gives you an opportunity, a little bit of a license for these schools and the conferences to say, you know what, let's completely tear the whole thing down to the foundation. Let's get it down to the studs and rebuild it and make it in a way that will benefit us, the student athletes, everything, the entire system. We now have kind of a blank canvas that we can work with. They have an opportunity here. And that's why I think, the NCAA in its current form is not relevant anymore. There might be relevance to it in a different way, as you're building it in a different way. But right now, with the way that everything is moving towards, the NCAA governing the way that it currently is and the way it has for the last God knows how many years, they're a dinosaur. Now's the time to start bringing it down and building it into something new.
I don't care what you call it. You can call it the ACNN. Like, it doesn't matter. That part to me doesn't matter, right? But there has to be a separate entity. So when I'm saying like the NCAA needs to be there, I don't mean like the NCAA literally. I mean it figuratively. Something has to be there. There has to be a governing body. What we don't want is 4 different different championships, right? And I know football is taking care of that to some degree with CFP, but think about basketball. Do you not want a major tournament that brings all the conferences together? There's a reason why it's worth $2 billion or whatever, because we all love it. Like, you still have to have that. So call it whatever you want. I don't care about that. I just mean, like, there needs to be something organizing across all leagues and some effort to universal competitiveness, right? You don't, and that is going to get dicey. And I don't know that yet, because you're not going to be able to tell the SEC like they can do and spend this and think that that's going to continue with what the Big 12 so I don't know how that will work. I don't know all the answers to that, but I do know it takes an army to put an NCAA tournament site in downtown Wichita, and schools and conferences are not equipped for that. I mean, they lean on the schools to come up with it. I get that. They use administrators, right? But there's still some effort to organization. Can that be done better? Hell yes, it can. Like, there's no question about that. But you still have to have something trying to govern this thing.
I get it. You have to have some sort of overarching, body to govern. I totally get all of that. I think that the NCAA in its current form and the way like Mark Emmert ran it, the way that Charlie Baker so far is running it, they're reluctant to change. They always have been.
NCAA and Pac-12 are a lot alike, aren't they?
Right. They've been a stick in the mud, and they're like, you know what? We're going to, keep doing what we're doing. I mean, like, think of the amount of time and dollars that the NCAA has spent on lobbying politicians. Like, come on, like the bureaucratic crap.
You could almost use that.
Get it out of there.
You could almost use that money to pay players.
Shocking. You could.
They
should. They won't.
We can't pay these players. We can't do that. We got too much lobby money going right now. We got Charlie Baker, grease palming politicians to help us, get this outrageous NIL under control. We can't afford that.
That's what I'm saying is you've got these conferences now and these member schools that I think we both agree in a lot of cases are more powerful than the NCAA.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a time to tear it down to the studs and start over. Right.
How often, how often or when was the last time do we see the NCAA like go after somebody anymore? They don't. I mean, they don't because they can't. Like they don't have that kind of power anymore. Those days are gone. The NCAA
didn't they take the effort to not pay players to the Supreme Court? Didn't it go all the way to the Supreme Court?
Horribly. They lose
like,
everything.
What are you doing?
Court. They lose everything because
if
like,
that's
there's
not
no
an indication
justification
to do something different, I don't know what is.
We don't get to do free labor here. Like that's not a thing. Like you're going to lose every time you try to do that. Like we have, there are just like there are labor laws everywhere. And it's like, oh, well, we don't think we need to pay these people for, generating all this revenue and money for our university. And every court in America can say, why? Like, excuse me? Based on what? Like, it's not, could you imagine like, Joe Schmo business, like going to court and be like, yeah, we provide these workers a great opportunity to learn how to do this. And, we get that we pay for their lunch every day. And, like, I really don't want to have to pay them. I don't think we should have to pay them. I mean, we're giving them this great opportunity to learn how to be a plumber. Like, I mean, they get this great platform to go learn how to plumb. I don't think we need to pay them. I'm going to get their lunch every day. I'll give them a little, I'll pick up their work uniform. We don't have to do that.
Burn the whole thing down. Burn the whole thing down.
Well, it is being burned down. It is. It already has been. I feel like
this is an opportunity, like a blank canvas.
It is.
Start fresh.
But it is starting fresh. It may still be called the NCAA, but make no mistake, like nothing is the same as it was 3 years ago. And it's going to change more. I do think after whatever happens with the ACC, I think we'll be done for a long time. I think we will get to that point, and then that will be what we have for a long time. But I don't know when that happens because it's not going to be 13 years from now, which is when the ACC deal comes up. That's what makes this story so interesting. Like you've got these two things, these two standoffs happening. The Big 12 versus the Pac-12, and as he paints it in the article, the ACC sort of versus itself internally in what happens. 869-1240 if you want to react to any of the discussion there. We'll touch back on Game 7 if you're just joining in the program. We open the show with that. We'll get back into that and look a little bit ahead to the conference playoff series of the NBA, the conference finals. That's all coming up. Albracht and Castor, Max Power producing. It's Sports Daily on a Monday.
Call in and give us your thoughts.
It's absolutely crazy.
316-869-1240. This is your home for sports. 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
It's time to get back to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Tommy, I'm getting some info on the Wichita State track from our friends over at Wichita State. At the meet for the men and women, they were 66 personal records, 14 all-time top 10 performances in Wichita State history, 7 for the men, 7 for the women. Just a wild performance there on that final day. So again, congratulations to them. We don't talk a lot. It's not really a talk radio topic all the time. So glad to be able to tip the cap to them, and we'll try and track down Rainbow. We can probably do that. He's a friend of the program. We've had him on quite a bit over the years. We'll try to do that this week. All right, Tommy, let's look ahead a little bit here to the conference championships in the NBA. I think that we're going to get 2 good ones. The West to me is far more interesting, as it generally is, than the East. But I do think Heat Celtics is interesting. But Heat Celtics feels like it could go one of 2 ways, right? Like it's either going to be friggin' awesome or the Celtics are going to blow them out of the water. I don't know where I feel. I don't know how I feel about that. In the West, I think there's very little chance we don't get a great series. I think we're going to have a great series in the West between the Lakers and Nuggets. And in the East, I do think there's concern. I hope that, because I do think, like, if it's competitive, it's going to be awesome competitive in the East. But I do think there is a chance the Celtics just roll through that series.
Yeah, I just wonder, you've got Jimmy Butler, who has been incredible during the postseason. You wonder, can that continue, and can he do it by himself against a team like the Celtics? Or, is there going to have to be more? And I don't even know where that production is going to come from. Is it going to come from Kevin Love? I don't know. I have no idea outside of Jimmy Butler how the Heat can get this done with the Celtics. But Butler's been a guy that he's consistently put the team on his back, and they've gotten it done.
Yeah, it's what they do. I mean, that's kind of how they roll. No big deal. Like, that's what we expect out of them, right? But we'll see. I just don't know. Like, I don't know who it's going to. I don't know anything about the Heat other than Jimmy Butler's awesome and that they're there and they're well coached.
But that's the question, right? Like, they can ride Jimmy Butler to a series victory against the Knicks, but can they ride Jimmy Butler to a series victory against the Celtics? I don't know.
Probably I don't either, because they're hard to predict, though. Like, I don't want to write them off completely because that's kind of what they do. I mean, they're an 8 seed and the Lakers are a 7 seed, but the Lakers, with LeBron and AD, and like, am I surprised that the Lakers are here? Am I surprised that the Lakers got through the Warriors? Yes, I am. But it's not like this crazy, outrageous. Like, we've all thought the Lakers, if they play their best, could win a title, right? Like, nobody thought the Heat could win a title, and I'm not sure that I still do. I don't think that I do think that. But Lakers Nuggets, man, like that. This is juicy. You've got Jokic with a chance to justify and silence the, for whatever reason, haters he has. And how many more of these chances is he going to get? I don't know. But their standing in the way is probably the last chance LeBron James is going to have at another title, right? And you have this AD LeBron. Like, this series to me has got it all, man. And it's funny how often LeBron is involved in these, career defining moments. He was involved in, Dirk Nowitzki's, and that solidified it for Dirk. And I always compare, again, not style, but just sort of perception and legacy, Dirk and Jokic. And here we go. Jokic has got a chance. And if you can go through them, and look, they would have to get through them, and then potentially, like, let's say it's the Celtics, the Nuggets, like, it's not this isn't going to be a winner of the West wins it all, because I think the Celtics, who, by the way, remember, we just talked about it, are the betting favorite. I do think the Celtics are the betting favorite, Tommy, because they're so much more likely to get there. I think the reason they probably passed, I thought about this after we looked at that early in the show. If you missed it, the Celtics have a better odds to win the title than either the Lakers or the Nuggets. But now that I think about it, I think it's because the Celtics are such heavy favorites in their series, and they're so likely to get there, when the Lakers Nuggets feels more like a coin flip kind of a series.
Yeah, I think that the Nuggets have this opportunity now to show that they belong. Like, not that they haven't belonged before,
they
right?
Do.
But
they're
like,
finally healthy. Like, this is their final real shot. Like, they're not their final, but they finally get that real shot, right? They're healthy. Things are going well. Like, there's no, but they don't have this player or whatever it is. Like, this is it for them.
Yeah. And so I think that opportunity is in front of them. We talked about it on Friday about the pressure that is on the organization. I still think that the pressure is more on the Nuggets organization than it is on Jokic individually, but the pressure's there regardless, right?
I think that Jokic,
there's going to be pressure on him, I think, individually, but the organization has got to do whatever possible to help Jokic get a championship. So that's where I think the pressure is more on their shoulders.
Do you think there is any pressure at all for LeBron and the Lakers here? I don't. I think all the pressure exists for Denver. I think LeBron and the Lakers have exceeded and reached a level of, like, where they can look back and be like, this is a good year. I think all the pressure's on Denver.
It was such a mess in LA, right? Not that long ago. The Russell Westbrook era was awful. So much drama. They're playing with house money right now.
All right. We'll be right back. We'll wrap it up on a Monday. All right. Conversation happening on the video streams today. You can always find us on Facebook and YouTube now. We're up daily there with the video stream. And of course, we appreciate your calls into the IHOP hotline as well, 869-1240. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll get back into it tomorrow. We'll be getting ready for the conference finals to begin in the NBA playoffs and be digging through some other stuff as well. Max, appreciate it. Fill in for Jad this week. We'll have Max. Tommy and I will be back tomorrow for a Tuesday edition. It's Sports Daily, Wichita Sports Hall of Fame induction coming, and much more. We'll see you then.